Hey, Bill Belichick, get out of Massachusetts.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network, your trusted source for Boston College news. Thank you all for joining us today for today's episode. We got a packed episode. We're going to look at BC staff adding a new position, something that's really big and I think is going to be important for future recruiting. We're going to look at the new hire. Defensive line coach is in. We'll tell you who that is and why I think it's a great fit for BC. I'm going to start things off with one of my former favorite coaches who's now becoming a giant pain in the butt for BC football, and that's Bill Belichick. But before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Now, it's been a busy week of recruiting. Staff is everywhere. As I said on yesterday's episode, we have Jonathan DiBiaso now in California. We have people, Ray Brown, I think, is in Florida. You have guys in Texas, all over the place. And then, as they're all everywhere, a sneaky little coach from Chapel Hill snuck his way back into the New England area. And that, of course, is Bill Belichick, the former New England Patriots head coach, was in Massachusetts recruiting. I think this is his first trip into New England since taking this job. And his stops were many of the big spots that BC recruits. This is big. He visited at Arlington High School. He visited Brady Beckenhuis, who is a Boston College commit. Offensive lineman. He was there, and Brady Beckenhuis retweeted with a goat symbol on top. Not good. He then visited Zavarian Brothers, and I've heard he visited a couple people, but one he definitely I know visited was Dominic Funk, a Boston College commit. Not good. He also visited St. Sebastian's High School, where he visited Marky Walbridge, who's Boston College's top recruit. Not good. And then he offered Marky Walbridge. So Bill Belichick is everywhere. And he was all over New England. Now, there hasn't been any flips. There hasn't been any changes yet. But the fact that he was in to see a lot of the schools that Bill O'Brien has really kind of cemented. I mean, look at the class of 2026. BC has 5 of the top 8 recruits in the state right now. And as I said, there's only one more that they would even really commit to, or 2 more, excuse me. So the fact that he's around is not good. I don't know how his recruiting pitches are going, though. Obviously, I'm a Pats fan. You guys know that. He's a legendary head coach. A lot of players would like to play for him. But I honestly believe it's not hard I don't think it's going to be hard to make a pitch against him, because starting on June 1st, Bill Belichick's buyout number goes from $10 million to $1 million. So if you're a smart, savvy coach, Bill Belichick is going to be, flaunting around his Super Bowl rings and working with Tom Brady and his wins and all that stuff. If you're a smart, savvy coach, you just show those players, hey, Don Shula's win record is not that far off for Bill Belichick. He has a contract that is basically set up so that if teams show interest in him next year, he's gone. So you're signing a paper, or you're committing to a coach that really doesn't have a long-term goal there. You may not even ever play for him. It doesn't seem that hard to make that connection. Now, the big question is, Bill O'Brien is the protege of Bill Belichick. Would he negatively recruit? Would either of these guys negatively recruit against each other? It's a cutthroat world out there, right? Like, this is not, these are, friends, but will they be, negative recruiting happens. It's just part of the game. Would Bill O'Brien have to do that to keep the guys that he wants? Having Bill Belichick in your living room or at your high school is obviously a big deal. There's not many coaches that can, Nick Saban. It's like almost like when Nick Saban would do these home visits, right? Like you have a guy in front of you that's one of the greatest of all time. It makes an impact. My hope, I think once that fades away, the I think where BC is going to be able to stand in is that there's much deeper roots for Boston College in these commitments. You know, yeah, it's great that Bill Belichick stopped by, but for some of these kids like Brady Beckenhuis, for instance, like he's been on campus how many times? He knows the staff. I'm sure they talk to him constantly. He has a strong relationship. So my hope is at the end of the day that these are just like, oh, this is really cool. I got to meet Bill Belichick, but hey, I'm going to still stay committed to Boston College. I think that's probably where these are all going to go. Like Dominic Funk, for instance, right? I mentioned Beckenhuis and his connections. Dominic Funk, his parents, his dad's a BC grad. His brother plays for BC. It would shock me if he decommitted to go to UNC. It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, Bill Belichick is around, but Bill Belichick is going to go all around everywhere. They're going to, UNC is going to parade him around and try to get recruits. Smart move to do it. One guy that they definitely could get is U-Haul because BC's not recruiting him. And he's been down to UNC. I know Belichick was there again. So, while Bill O'Brien is in New Jersey, he was again in 2 high schools in New Jersey with Savon Huggins. I love that they're pushing New Jersey again. Hafley, for a guy from New Jersey, really started to fall apart in that state. It's great to see Bill O'Brien trying to rebuild it. While he's doing all that, his mentor kind of went through the back door and was like, "Hey, Massachusetts, I'm back," and we'll see if that actually has any impact. But it's definitely worth watching. I mean, for someone like Marky Walbridge, that is a name I think a lot of folks are watching. He's going to be a 4-star. In the last 2 days, Walbridge received an offer from UNC and Nebraska. So there's definitely more interest coming up for him. Can BC, hold their own when this stuff is happening? I think that the steadiness of Bill O'Brien is where that's going to come into play, but it's going to be an interesting recruiting season for that. Now, in our second segment and third segment, we're going to talk staffing. I promise you it's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about staffing because BC very quickly made their defensive line coach hire. I'll explain who that is. And then our final segment, they added a new position. And this is another position I think you're going to want to know more about. We'll get into all that in just a moment. Attending NFL playoffs game is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans are unmatched. I remember the thrill of seeing my Patriots clinch a playoff win live. It's a memory I'll never forget. Pretty ironic after talking about Bill Belichick for a whole segment. This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you can focus on what matters, being there. I use Game Time Picks to grab tickets for an upcoming playoff game in years past, and it couldn't have been easier. I found a super deal that gave me incredible values for an amazing seat, and I couldn't even preview the view from my spot before booking. The all-in pricing is a game changer. No surprise fees at checkouts, plus on-time ticket delivery makes sure you're not worried about it. You're getting your tickets right there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. It's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you all who have made us your first listen every day. When you want another episode to check out, I want to tell you about Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. Season's over, but the news never stops. So check out Locked On College Football wherever you get your podcasts. Now, got a little news snip. Like sometimes there's times where I just have like a really quick thought that I wanted to put in. And I'm not going to do a whole segment on it, but I want to do this one really quick. I'll do that actually. You know what? Scratch that, AJ. We'll do it in the third segment. I'm gonna make you tease it for a little bit. I need to tell you the big news of the day, which is that Boston College has landed their defensive line coach, and that is assistant defensive line coach for the Cleveland Browns, Jordan Thomas. Ironically enough, I did a whole episode yesterday on Jordan Thomas of a recruit from the class of 26, but this is a different Jordan Thomas. Jordan Thomas is a former SDSU defensive lineman who coached there. He coached their defensive line. He was the defensive line coach there when they had a very good defense. Went to the Cleveland Browns, worked with Myles Garrett, and comes on recommendation from Mike Vrabel, who worked on that staff as an advisor for the last 2 years. So Mike Vrabel, if you've been listening to Bill O'Brien the last couple days or the last week or so, he's been singing the praises of Mike Vrabel because they work together. And Mike Vrabel, gave him this recommendation. They hired him. Younger coach. I think he graduated college in like 2013. So, on the younger side, from California. So that's another connection there. And a young up and coming coach. I like this. I like that it hits a lot of the marks of what you want. He's from an area that you want to recruit in, California. He comes with connections from the Patriots, not from the Patriots, from Vrabel, and he's up and coming. He's an up and comer. That I like. I like to get the new guys sometimes too, because you get sometimes, a Ray Brown, or you've had some younger coaches in the past years where you get them, at a school like BC where you have to be able to get value out of some of the positions because you just don't have the money to build staffs like, Kirby Smart or Dabo does. You get some nice value here, and I think he's going to be a good one. It's hard to gauge, right off the bat, like, is he going to be able to change things? What did he do? He was an assistant defensive line coach. Like, how am I going to be able to figure that out? But if you look up his stats for what he did when he was at San Diego State, their defensive line did really well. And, you could say too that when he was with the Browns, they pointed to that too. But when you get guys like Myles Garrett, that's not that hard to do. So, it's a good hire. And I got to say two quick things. My two impressions that came out of this about where things are going. One, impressive that Bill O'Brien did this so quickly. How many times in the history of BC coaching searches, and if you go back through old episodes, you can listen to me rant and rave about this. It just takes forever. Like they're just slow. They're they have to go through all the hoops and tricks and everything like that to get the coach here. This took, I think, about a week. I think it was like a week ago last Thursday that we found out about Commission. Now, we don't know what Jeff Commission, why he left. Was this a guy that Vrabel recommended and O'Brien immediately went to and was like, I'm going to get rid of my guy to get this dude? I don't know. I don't know what the case is, but it was quick. So that's one piece. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that now that O'Brien is here, one thing is very clear is that his reach and his circle for potential spots to fill on his staff is much bigger than Jeff Hafley's. Hafley had his time, as in coaching circles. He worked in Pitt staff and with Chip Kelly and things like that. So he knew some people, but his circle wasn't honestly that big. Like when Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider and I, we do our big boards, his weren't that hard to create because there wasn't a huge pool. Bill O'Brien has a big pool because he's been in a bunch of different spots. He's an older coach. That makes it, that. But he also trusts people too. He has people that he trusts. And that group is big. Like he's, I would say Belichick, but he's gone. But he's going to trust a guy like Vrabel. He's going to trust guys in the NFL in college ranks that he's worked with, the people that he knows. So a guy like Jordan Thomas kind of came out of left field, but it makes a lot of sense. Like it's not like when you hear what he's done and how he connected to Bill O'Brien, it makes a lot of sense. Like he's, Vrabel, someone he trusts. Vrabel worked on his staff on the Texans. And so he made that recommendation. Bill O'Brien met this guy and hired him. That makes a lot of sense. So, but that's just something to look forward to moving forward. Is if a coach leaves or gets poached or whatever, O'Brien has a huge pool to look at. If you're going for he's going to go for guys he trusts. And folks, I know Halfley got a lot of um, flack for that, but I don't think that's what coaches do. They're not just going to bring in someone they don't know. They're going to bring in people that they've heard good things about from people they trust or people in their circle. O'Brien's done it. You go down up and down the ranks of coaches. That's what they do. That's what they do. Look at how Mike Vrabel's setting up his staff with the Patriots right now. It's all former coaches or people that he knows, like Josh McDaniels, the guy from the Lions. That's how the coaching circles are it's a boys club. They recycle a lot of names, and that's how it's going to work. Now, this means that Boston College now has a complete staff. Everyone's there, and looking at what's going on in the recruiting trails, it doesn't look like any changes are going to happen. I don't see. I mean, maybe it will, but it doesn't look like any of the guys are going to leave. Like, I know folks were wondering about Matt Turn, the special teams coordinator. I think instead of him leaving, which I know folks don't agree with me on this, but they basically nuked. If you look at the rosters up on BC Eagles, they basically nuked the punting room. Ivan Savenko doesn't seem to be there. Sam Candotti is not on the list, and they brought in 2 new guys. I know kicking was an issue too. I think it was a holder, but they brought in someone else new there. I think they brought in a whole bunch of new guys. The big thing with special teams coordinators is that they do a lot of the blocking and on kick returns and things like that. And kicking is kind of like their own beast. You've heard Mitch Wolf on here say things like that. The blocking and things like that have been fine. It's the kicking. So just reshuffling those cards and getting out the ones that weren't working probably might be the better choice, or at least give you the chance to see if that's the issue and not your coach. So I think that's where they're probably going with that. Now, in our final segment, I had that little nugget I want to talk about, and it's about a transfer question that folks have been having about a new player on Notre Dame that came out. I'll give you my thoughts on that. And then a new addition to BC staff gives BC a bigger staff and shows that they're starting to put in more money when they need to. We'll get into that in just a moment. Welcome back. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you all who listen to us first thing every morning. If I'm your first listen, I know I'm doing my job right, and I appreciate each and every one of you that listens to Locked On Boston College first thing every day. When you're done with this episode, check out Locked On ACC, hosted by Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono. They have a great podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, let's go over that quick little nugget. I'm going to give it to you right now. The nugget, which is people saw that Notre Dame lost a feeling like 5 or 6 offensive linemen in just like the last 2 days to the transfer portal. And at least 2 or 3 of them are starters. So people have been asking me, like, are BC going to be involved in those ones? No. Nope. The starters, nope. They're not going to, because the starters are leaving because Notre Dame pays well. But you know who pays even better? SEC schools pay better. Other Big Ten schools pay better. So I would bet my house that there's some big program for each of those kids that Sam Pendleton or the starting center or whoever's there that are going to pay them well. And it's not going to be Boston College. But Boston College is not going to get a kid from Notre Dame that's starting for them. The bigger question, though, was one of the offensive linemen that popped out was Ty Chan, who, if you remember, was it 3 or 4 years ago, was from Lawrence Academy in Massachusetts, local kid, 4-star. That was one of those. BC was the bridesmaid recruiting sagas. They could not beat Notre Dame, and Chan ended up at Notre Dame. He has not played. I mean, played special. I think he played. He's an offensive lineman, 6'5", 300 plus, so he could play tackle, but most likely interior guard. he did not play much other than special teams for Notre Dame. He has like a year or two left, but he's in the portal. So that's the bigger question. Will BC look at him? Now, for folks that keep asking me, basically there's no portal like closing for guys coming in. But for BC and for most schools, it should be this. Classes have started. So the portal for getting kids in for spring practice is basically closed. Like you can't, class has been going on for over a week and a half now. BC's not, the admissions is not going to let kids just come in 2 weeks late. It's just not going to happen because you're going to have to bring them in. You're going to have to recruit them. It's going to take another week. For spring, a guy like Tai Chan will definitely not be. That's not going to happen. It's not. The bigger question is they could still, this is a potential thing, they could still recruit him and do all that and then just have him start in the summer. That's potentially there too. That being said, you look at the roster right now and the numbers and how things work out right now with scholarships and walk-ons and the house settlement and NCAA rules. I have no idea where that's going to land by the fall. I think it's at 105 right now, but it could all change. I mean, it was 105 for scholarships right now, but then it turned into if the house settlement goes through, I think it's 105 total, including walk-ons, which is brutal. This is what Bill O'Brien keeps complaining about. So I look at that, and that could happen, but the numbers right now they're up against it. Like BC has a full roster. So you'd have to do that with the thought that maybe someone leaves in the spring. I don't know if they would do that. I don't know. I have not seen the staff following him recently. Any of the newer staff, you could see like if you look at Tai Chan's Instagram or Twitter page, you can find like Savon Huggins, but it's all the old staff like Steve Shimko's still on there and a few other guys. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to look at him. I mean, it would be good. I think honestly, getting another, obviously someone of his pedigree that even if he hasn't really played, throw him in there. I mean, someone who's worked with Notre Dame's offensive line coach, please bring him in. So that's just something to think about. Now, speaking of recruiting, BC made an interesting new hire this week, with the addition of a new director of high school recruiting. Now, if you saw it on Twitter, his name is Julian Rowe Cohen, and he comes from UNC. He's a director of high school recruiting and player personnel. So if you're looking at like the hierarchy, it goes like Bill O'Brien. The Bills are going to kill me with this. Bill O'Brien, Spencer Dickow, then Julian. And this is interesting because now you have even more of a structure and you can delineate and do more. Spencer, they're going to have Spencer Dickow do some, his thing. And then you can have this new guy coming from UNC really focusing on the recruiting piece. More minds, more bodies to do this work is going to make things even more streamlined and more effective for BC. How it changes how BC does their high school recruiting, it's going to be interesting to see. As someone who works for 247, I'm very interested to see how this changes my interactions because, when I talk to the staff, I usually talk to some coaches I talk to, but I also talk to Spencer a lot too. Like when I get my visitors lists and things like that, it usually comes from Spencer. So I think things are going to change, and it's interesting to see that they made this hire. Someone who he was very high up on Mac Brown's staff, but again, this is regardless of the role that he's going to play and how that all kind of ekes out. It's another showing. Bill O'Brien came here with the hope of building up the staff and putting more money into it. We saw it last year with Burge Nigerian. That was a new role that was added. They put more money in to get Craig Fitzgerald, one of the elite strength and conditioning coaches. They're doing this. Bill O'Brien on John Mita Perel's podcast said they're doing more with social media stuff. They're going to be hiring some new people there. So they're building this. They're putting money in. The thought that BC is just cheap and won't do it, I feel like that moniker is continuing to be eroded away as they're putting more money into it, as they should. and adding into the staff so that we can compete against other programs that are doing the exact same thing. So this was a new hire, and we'll have to wait to see how it all pans out. Well, thank you all for listening. On Monday's show, we'll be back to talk about the weekend. There's no visitors at BC this weekend, so it's going to be quiet. But BC and BU play in the Battle of ComAv. I'm sure we'll have a few thoughts on that. BC basketball goes to Chapel Hill. Can they get off the schneid and end the 5-game losing streak? I don't think so. But follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 or Locked On BC on Twitter. You can find Instagram. I usually use my BC Eagle Insider to post Locked On stuff on there. We're on Blue Sky, Threads. Find me, look for me. You'll find me there. Make sure you follow. Hit that like and subscribe button. I hope you guys check that out. And if you're not on YouTube, I'm going to be doing a few new things here. I like doing these videos now. You guys get to see me. You get to see my mug. But I'm going to be doing some shorts. So things happen. Sometimes I want to just give you a quick boom before the show goes up. It's going to be more like casual AJ, where I'm just kind of, either on the couch or doing, walking around or doing something. A minute long shorts. Those are all going to go up to YouTube. If you want like a quick snap of what happened, make sure you're subscribed to YouTube. Find Locked On BC there. And we'll see you all again on Monday for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.